I still actually like have stress dreams the day that season is starting, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm unprepared, I haven't trained. And then I'll like wake up kind of in that panic and be like, oh, that's no longer real. I don't remember what my last race was. And I think part of that was just from that letdown at the end there. I felt so much like happier and more productive when I was in season versus out of season.
100%.
The comparison to the former self, it's tough. It's hard to like not define yourself too much by these objective measures. Is the fun of this being good at this, or is the fun of this like the process of doing it?
I ran to run down the court. Like my running always had a purpose.
Yep. Maybe that's that kind of almost like the high that I'm chasing. It's like the post-race blues and you're like, all right, now what do I do? Do I just keep signing up for something else? And the come down from that is tough.
We've got Jack Burgeson on this episode, who has a unique no former athlete story, beginning with a late start in his collegiate sport. Jack opens up about the thrill and the challenges of competing in college, the pivotal decisions that shaped his athletic career, and how he keeps the athletic spirit alive long after graduation. We dive into the mindset that drives him and why he believes being an athlete is a lifelong identity. If you're looking for inspiration to stay active long into your adult life, this episode's for you. Jack, I'm so glad that you're here. Are you an athlete?
I am an athlete.
I like that. When I just say that, what are kind of the first things that start to come to mind? What makes you be like, yeah, you know what, I am?
I think part of it is just still that I've always kind of classified myself as an athlete, and I'm still holding on to that that image or that identity, I'll say. And I guess it like just flashing into my mind at that point, I mean, I immediately think of sports or motion activity, like getting out and doing something. So I went for a run this morning after a night out at DePauw. So I would maybe that alone, I can solidly say yes.
Well, and it's like priority and identity piece. It's like, you're going for a run. Yeah. Because that's what you need and that's what your body feels. And I love that. You were a collegiate swimmer. What did sports look like for you before that?
It was the opposite of swimming, actually. So I grew up my whole life as a baseball player. Okay. So team sports in a different sense. Yep. And didn't actually start swimming until junior year in high school.
Stop.
So I had a bunch of friends who decided to join the team, and then they kind of peer pressured or bullied me in. So we were in like the 2008 like Michael Phelps bubble year. So swimming became something from like no one really did it, and then all of a sudden our high school team exploded. So I think they had 14 or 15 kids the year prior, and then I think there were 40 or 45 like my junior year.
Okay, that's
so
wild.
The captains did a great job of like recruiting folks and getting people in. Yeah. So I joined actually the last day you could possibly join swimming junior year. It was the day before our first meet. Yeah. So I went to practice. I learned to swim kind of, and they put me in the like 100 IM relay. So I actually had to learn all four of the strokes in the first day, and then swim it on a relay. Like 25 of each stroke. And the friend actually who convinced me to swim had joined the day before. He did his practice, did the meet, and then he quit. So I still thank him quite a bit for kind of that inspiration. And he's like, you know what? I don't like swimming. I don't like being wet. It's hard. It's an aerobic sport, but you're holding your breath. It doesn't make any sense. So that was my intro to swimming. And then from that junior year on, like it fully transitioned.
No kidding.
Yeah, I initially like was looking at colleges and I was like, oh, I'd love to play baseball there. And so DePauw, like I knew like I was not by any means good enough to go D1. So I was like, oh, D3 school would be great. Still balancing academics, athletics, kind of the quintessential D3 goal. And then as the year went on, kind of transitioned into thinking like, okay, maybe like swimming was new to me and baseball had been my entire life. All the summers, all the tournaments, all the leagues. So I pulled the plug and decided to go for swimming, and then thankfully was able to swim here.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun. I don't know, when I think of like my friends, like what we do when we were hanging out, like it was all pretty much sports related. So one of my friends was the tennis captain, so we'd play tennis all the time. I golfed a ton and worked at a golf course in the summer, so that was the other like the fun summer activity. And I always enjoyed that was more. And I still love golf. And that was more of a, like something fun to do that I didn't have to put the pressure on as an athlete. Because it actually was the same season in Minnesota as baseball. So I remember like before freshman year, I had to choose. I was like, all right, what am I going to do? And it's kind of crazy how, like looking back, I remember like talking with my parents and having all these freak out moments like, oh, I love baseball. I love golf. Like, what should I do? How am I? And then it really kind of transitioned like your friend groups and all these different things and kind of those priorities from a young age. So it's kind of crazy to think back on how pivotal those decisions were leading into like, even in like as a freshman in high school. Yeah.
Well, and it's like those types of decisions, they start with you. Is this something that I enjoy enough to play? Yeah. But then it's like, okay, if I have to weigh one versus the other, it's like, okay, well, what's going to be more fun?
Yep.
What am I going to, enjoy being around and spending that time on?
Yeah.
Junior year, you learn how to swim.
This is the first time doing anything competitive with it.
Yeah.
And it kind of just, skyrocketed from there.
Did you love it right from the start?
I did. Yeah.
Did
and
you?
I think it's a weird sport to love because it is so hard. Like
it is so hard.
Still think back on it and I was like, I still actually like have stress dreams like now
you?
where I like wake up and or like I'm in the dream and I think it's like the day that season is starting and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm unprepared. I haven't trained.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to commit myself to another year of this? And waking up so early. So, and then I'll like wake up kind of in that panic and be like, oh, that's no longer real. I'm thankful. Yeah.
That's not a thing anymore, but yeah. Alex still has I never remember my dreams, but every now and then Alex will wake up and she'll be like, I had another basketball dream.
Yep.
I left my shoes in my locker for the away game.
Yep.
I couldn't play, or like her jersey shorts. Or it's always about like not getting there in time
100%.
or leaving an article of clothing. Or
just and I don't know if that's just the desire to like be prepared, and then all of a sudden like that's maybe for whatever reason my biggest fear is like not being prepared for something. And I don't know, my dad would always use the phrase like. Be prepared so you don't have to get prepared.
Yep.
And it's like, oh gosh, maybe that's just ingrained in me a bit too.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I will because that's all I know and it works. Yeah. Thinking back on high school, Jack, that decision between swimming and baseball, did it feel like an easy decision or was it like you were thinking about it for a long time to decide what you wanted to pursue in college?
More the latter. I vacillated back and forth for quite some time, and when it really boiled down to is I felt like I had like done the baseball thing. I had several years and great experiences and really did enjoy it. And I think the novelty of swimming and just the idea, it was fun to see the progression too. Talk about two vastly different sports, something pretty like objective, like swimming, and you're like you have a time there, like you go back and forth and like there's a number that pops up. Versus baseball, I mean, you have statistics, things like that, but you really can't grasp as much about like how someone is a player, things like that. So
it's actively in swimming, you're competing, so you're still competing against another team, against another athlete, but there's not contact, there's not reacting to the ball, there's not a change. It's like when you're standing on that block, you know what you're going to do.
Exactly.
It's just how well you're going to do it in that moment. But the other person isn't going to like come into your lane to where you have to react and avoid them. You know,
there's no steals.
There's no steals.
Exactly. There's like nothing like basketball that you had to worry about. So, and I liked that. It was fun to see the progression of times, and I think that has kind of helped me transition now to just being so driven for times and other things, whether it's like running or triathlon. I think that those objective measures have really been something that has kind of driven me beyond those college years.
You stepped into a new sport your junior year. Junior year is like that year where you kind of need to pick which one you want to lean into the most college-wise, but you had never done it competitively, and then having that new spark, because so often by the time you get to high school, you're usually just playing a sport that you had already started when you were young.
Fine-tuning the details.
Totally.
Yeah.
But you were like, this is untapped, and I haven't explored it, and I haven't seen how good I could get.
Yeah. I was more excited to try swimming and see where it would lead versus continuing with what I had known more of my whole life growing up.
Totally. And also just starting a new sport like that and being able to compete at a level that colleges were looking at you and you could consider it collegiately, because too, sometimes I feel like for us, we were collegiate student athletes and we did have the opportunity to continue our sport. But really, when you look at the percentages, right, it's a very small percentage that plays collegiately, even smaller, as it goes professionally and all of that. So that's even just being able to be at that level is amazing. Yeah. And then you competed all 4 years of college.
Made it through all 4. We came in, I think, with a class of like 13 freshman swimmers. Okay. And as you can imagine, between injuries and priorities and life-changing, I think it dwindled down to about 6 or 7 of us who were there like all 4 of the years. Yeah. So it was cool to have that transition and kind of grow with the team and see how things went through those 4 years. Lots of ups and downs.
How was it personally? Because you made that decision to lean into it and be like, well, let's see where swimming takes me.
I was so intimidated when I first got to campus because so many, like, swimming to most of these folks was what baseball was to me. This is what they had done their whole life in their summers and club teams. So I had only, I guess I had had 2 seasons. I really did not know what to expect. And I was like, there's a chance I can't keep up in a single practice. I don't know what I'm doing. I know what my times are, and I know they're okay. But like the level of training was so different between like our 4-month season in high school compared to like what felt like a 6-month plus season here in college with 2-a-days with morning lifting and just complete commitment. And I think that also I was incredibly nervous, but also very excited just to see if I could hang. And again, it was nice. Like, even I remember after the first couple of practices, I was like, okay, I can like, I'm not drowning. I'm keeping up. Like, I'm making it back and forth, and I haven't like cried yet.
The negative to this is drowning. And I'm not doing that.
Exactly. So something is going right. But it was really fun. I think the very first meet we had, I set like best times. So like faster than like the tapered times I had in senior year of high school. So it was really cool. Again, just having those numbers and being able to say like, all right, this is what I used to be able to do. Now in the beginning of the season where I'm already like out of shape or like getting in shape, but like really kind of on that ramp up. It was so cool to just have those things and just kind of keep pushing it down as things went on.
At that point, you'd done the work to get to your team, to get to college, and you had nothing to lose at that point, and it was just like, okay, let's see how good I can get myself.
So it was almost like as stressful as it was still kind of stress-free. I didn't have many expectations. And I think that led to the excitement and the ongoing excitement.
Absolutely. Thinking back to it and how your transition was and your decision into swimming, those first couple years of college, how did you feel about your decision of not doing baseball? Did that come up, or do you remember kind of how you felt?
I think one of the things that was so almost shocking to me, like I think I was maybe friends with like one baseball player at DePauw. And it was crazy to think of like you walk in with built-in friends as a team, and like they are still like, I'd say the swimmers are my like lifelong friends. Like we're in everyone's wedding, stuff like that. And it's so crazy to me thinking like I think I could name like 3 people who played baseball at DePauw like throughout the years here. I guess a little bit more, but but it's crazy. Like I was like that decision, like the friend groups in my life, like it's kind of crazy to think of where I would have been thereafter. After again, I was choosing just a sport. I was choosing an activity, a hobby. Like again, it really does kind of create that identity for you, and then shapes who you are around and who you're choosing to spend time with.
And those 2 sports are so entirely different.
100%.
You know, like just so different that
Partly after like meeting the swim team too, like I felt so happy with the decision.
I love that.
So we actually our recruiting trip to campus was Little 5 weekend, which was a bold time to have a recruiting trip.
That is so bold.
So we actually, our class of 13, of the 13 people who attended that recruiting weekend, everyone committed, which that I think just speaks volumes to like how much fun we all had and how excited everyone was about this opportunity to swim here.
Absolutely. Did you ever have aspirations to swim beyond college?
Definitely. I knew I was going to be done, like when DePauw was done. And I think a lot of that just, again, being in a time-driven sport, like I knew that I was nowhere near anything where like the D1 or Olympics, anything like that. Like I had my fun. I had the times like really got the most out of myself for those years, but I knew that swimming would kind of be ending at that point. There are plenty of opportunities for like masters teams and different ways and even with that, there are some of my friends have gone on and like done the masters national meet and just like gone out to compete. And I think that still excites me a bit, but I think it's also a little bit hard knowing that like I still swim pretty regularly, and the times that I can go like in practice, or if I'm pushing myself hard, are so far off of where I was that gap and that barrier between the two makes me like, I'm like, all right, it would take so many hours in a week to even get remotely close to where I used to be that I've decided to kind of spend that time and effort in other sports and other activities and still using swimming for fitness. And to me, it's like my yoga. It's like I feel so much better after a swim. You're stretched out, you're loose, it's low impact. It's the opposite of running in that sense. So I've loved it for I don't know, there's something cool about just diving into the water and then all of a sudden it's silent. You just hear that rushing by. So it's a good way to like clear my mind. I still feel like I do a lot of great thinking there, but it is definitely transitioned away from being a goal for like an objective time and more because I still enjoy it and I enjoy the process and like how I feel both during and after.
I always find it interesting because for me, I was basketball, volleyball, soccer. You're on a field, you're on a court,
Yep.
You're playing against people, the team is there, versus being a runner or being a swimmer that are activities that sometimes people pick up later in life or are activities that people just do on their own recreationally.
Yep.
Obviously, there's the highly competitive side of it, but I always wonder for people that competed in it, if they're able to get it to where it's that, to where it's meditative versus not just like, oh, why do it? Because I can't get the same times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you finished your season here at DePauw, did you kind of just continue to swim on and off throughout, or did you have to take a break from it?
I'm trying to think back.
Yeah.
I know some teammates who like probably have barely jumped in the water since the time that they finished. And they were like, and tended to be more of the folks who really had done this their entire life from club and onwards. And I think, again, even though I guess I swam for 6 total years and now would still consider myself a swimmer, but had 6 competitive years. So I think that I kind of kept up with it a bit more than some others might have.
Yeah.
But and I think some of that too stems from like the end of my college career was pretty like anticlimactic, which was a bummer. I had thankfully somehow like made it to nationals each of the 4 years, and my senior year was definitely like the times I had at our midseason tapered meet were like leaps and bounds ahead of where I had been, and it was like a summer leading into it where I had swam like more than I ever had and really put all the time in, knowing that like, hey, this is it. This is the last big year. And then about 2 weeks before the national meet, which was actually in Indianapolis, so it's kind of a quote unquote home meet. We knew we'd have plenty of folks around. 2 weeks before, I got super sick. And swimming is an interesting sport because you put all this hard work in and you're just kind of really grinding day after day, and then you taper. And more so than running and all these other sports, like you get a pretty good percentage drop in your time. So you taper, you rest, you shave down, like you put on the tech suits, and like your times are just leaps and bounds ahead.
And it's very regimented, and it's very like I know what you're saying by that, where it's kind of like, but then you also need to do it on those certain days and in that order for your body to be ready.
Yep, exactly. So there is a true peak. Whereas like basketball, you can have a great game here and there, and you want to have your best showing like in the championship game. But swimming, it's like your entire season is a build up for this like this taper, this rest period, and then you'll have your best times. So of course, getting sick at that time was horrific. So we got to the national meet, swam the first couple relays, and my times were like what they had been in season. So I really had like truly no improvement, no drop. And that was tough because, again, like a couple months before that, I had dropped tons of time and was going like lifetime best.
And you were banking on it, you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, this is how it goes, and then it dropped, Yeah,
and it's such a bizarre sport. Like we were swimming 2 to 4 hours a day with lifting and all these other things. And my races were like the goal was like 20 seconds.
Yep.
So I'm putting hours in for 20 seconds, and it's crazy to think of like these half seconds being a big deal, but going like 20.9 on a relay versus 20.1 like doesn't sound like that much of a difference, but it's like leaps and bounds different. And I was going like the wrong side of that equation. Dang. So I think that was part of it. I actually the relay I was most excited about, and we were like highest ranked in the country for was like the last night of the meet. Yeah. And I was feeling a bit better, and it was actually like a discussion between Coach Cohen and myself and one other guy on the team who had been having a great meet.
Right.
And so like I knew that this was going to be like my last chance, my last race, and ended up like getting pulled from the spot, or kind of like, which again was, or more of a, I guess it was more of kind of a group decision. I was like, hey, like I'm not swimming well. Like this is, I can go out and swim my hardest, but it's probably not going to be what it should be to help the team. Yeah. And one of our like sophomore swimmers at the time stepped up, and they ended up getting 4th in the country, which was like such a high and such a low for me at the same point. Cause I was like, man, I know that if things had worked out like at my best, like that could have been me, and we could have been up there and on the podium. But at the same time, I was like, man, it was so hard to kind of watch that from the sidelines. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, thinking back on that, and I think that was part of it. It's like, I think I've been still so driven with sports, or like wanting to continue swimming in the back of my mind, just because it was such a kind of a letdown for that last.
It was right there.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, it's like they were able to get 4th and all of that, and that's the team part of the sport. But yeah, that's hard.
It's hard not being not being on the blocks and like giving it your all. So like this is what's weird too. I don't remember what my last race was, because that was going to be it. So I don't even remember like what relay was before that. And I was still, again, like it wasn't anything special, but like if I had to think of it, I don't know what my last like collegiate swim was. And I think part of that was just from that letdown at the end there. So it was tough. I remember like talking to my parents. I mean, my parents were obviously like not upset. They were like sad for me and just like it was just bad timing and and I guess that's life. And you learn just as much from the highs as you do from the lows, and probably more from the lows. But.
Totally. How long did that take to get over that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Was it kind of one of those where you were like, all right, just gotta move on to the next thing, push that aside, or I mean, we were all like 21, 22 at this time, so
no, but and it's hard. Yeah, it's like you think of it in that way too, and it's like, all right, like it was just like one part of your college life. But again, I think it's hard when you put that much time and effort into one thing.
Devastating.
And then you have a goal, and like for something that is seemingly like out of your control, that doesn't happen, and that I think was the hardest part. But that helped me rationalize it. Like, hey, this is nothing I did wrong. It's not like, hey, you didn't put in the work and the effort, and that's why you had a crummy meet, and that's why you didn't get this thing that you've been working towards. It was more like, all right, this was just bad luck. But again, it took a couple weeks to like. It's hard. Like at the end of season, which again felt infinite back in the day. Like there's so much fun stuff happening on spring on a college campus. So I think that actually like was a great distraction. You're coming up for all the fun weekends and Little Five and like formals and all these different things. And finally being like out of season after training an extra month between like conference and nationals, you're like, all right, I needed this time off. I needed this release. So I think I really dove into like the extracurriculars and everything outside of swimming more so than swimming. But no, but I think it weighed on me. Like, because again, like part of so much of like that goal and that identity as like a college attendee and athlete was based on swimming. So it's hard to not have that come to fruition at the end.
Absolutely. So. With your transition then out of sport, you graduate, all of that, you go to med school. Yep. You went directly, right?
Yep, directly.
Okay, that's what I thought. With kind of athlete being a big part of your identity from young baseball times, all the way up and through. What was that transition like for you? You had a first transition from I kind of did this baseball thing for a while and then switched over. But then once that collegiate career's done, you're not actively competing in that way, in that sport in the same way.
Yeah. So that transition, thinking back to my time like on campus and at DePauw, I felt so much like happier and more productive when I was in season versus out of season.
100%.
And I worked harder. I used my time better.
Oh, all of us.
And like you're still time stressed, but I like with those extra things outside of the goal of school, I think it like kind of brought me to my full potential. And then out of season, it was fun, but all of a sudden like the hours would be gone, and it's like it's now 9:00 and I haven't started those things. Whereas
I've got time to do that later.
Exactly.
Where during season I don't have the choice of when I can do my homework. It's built in for me because that's literally the only time
it's essentially prescribed.
It is absolutely prescribed.
So it was part of it was just learning to like make that adjustment, but also like knowing myself after like again going in season out of season for those 4 consecutive years. I was like, all right, starting med school, I was like, I need something outside of school to still like keep me happy.
Okay.
And that actually just fitness in general was a big thing. I used to hate running. As a swimmer, like you're pretty soft. Like I don't know, it's like the opposite of basketball, agility, all these things. Like we're floating in a pool, we're going back and forth. Like we lift, but it's like running just was painful. Yep. So I used to run like a mile or two and then think of that as like like I went for a run. Yeah. And so it took me a while to build up, but I realized in med school like how convenient running was. So that really is when I like fell in love with it. So started with like 2-mile runs or 3-mile runs from where I was living, and all of a sudden you realize like, all right, in the time it would take me to get to and from a pool or to and from a gym, I can be done with the workout. And so that convenience blossomed, and then we had a great like med school class. I was at IU Bloomington, and there were 36 of us like in the med school class. So Indiana is actually I think still the largest med school in the United States, and they accomplished that by like spreading folks out around the state. So being in Bloomington, which was a quintessential college town, we'd like had season basketball tickets. We still had kind of that college experience. We played intramurals, whether like we had basketball, volleyball, like a bunch of different things. So I think I was still able to kind of like fill that void of sports there while making it something fun outside of studying, because we were spending plenty of time studying. But yeah, that's really when like running took over, and I was like, all right, I don't necessarily need to like, I know I'm not going to again do this like do something professionally, but it was fun again to like have these numbers and be like, all right, I've never done this. Let me transition. And then I guess this seems to be a recurring theme in my life here. Let me see like what I can do to like push myself and like what that can lead to from a numbers perspective So I signed up for my first half marathon was like first year of med school, and our dean was incredible. So he like he just wanted us to be happy as like students. So he would cover entry fees for races, stuff like that. We had kind of like a wellness budget almost. So like I'd say half of our med school class signed up for this half marathon and all ran it as like everyone like pushed it and had that, and then that spurred into like pushing half marathons, then marathons, and now triathlon. So that really has been kind of that fun cascade of like, hey, I actually do like running. I know how to swim, and I've always loved biking. So it's been fun to kind of put all those together. But I guess speaking more to that identity, like I think I needed sports like in a different way in med school. I needed it as like a separate outlet, and I needed it to be something fun, because I don't think I would have been able to kind of balance the stress and all of the time if I was like doing it for a specific goal or like competitive like drive. I still was competitive in my mind, but I needed it more from like the endorphin rush and like the break from studying and just like moving and getting out of a desk rather than I needed like the team or the competitive side of it.
Right. You know, by transitioning to swimming, which is so time-based, whether it was conscious or subconscious at the time, you know that you're driven by that, this is new. Let me see how far I can take this, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of a theme for you. And when you're in a medical program across the board, no matter what kind of the, you know, profession is specifically, you don't have a lot of extra time. Yeah. But you have to make extra time because otherwise you're going to burn out and it's going to be too much. So it's important to make that extra time, but it still has to be quick. It still has to, you know, do fill that void in a different way. Yeah.
I guess I really appreciated like having that foundation that was kind of set in both in high school and then at DePauw of knowing exactly what you just mentioned. You are going to have to prioritize something in order to make it happen. Yeah. And if you don't, you're kind of going to be spinning your wheels and you'll be like worse off on both sides. So like taking that break, even though it seems stressful when like a test is coming up, is going to make you a better, like more relaxed and just a better like well-rounded person than just pushing through on one goal.
Yeah. How often do you swim now? No Former Athlete is a podcast and soon-to-be documentary all about starting the conversation around loss of identity after sport, how that impacts us all in very different ways, and check in with retired athletes to see how they're doing. How are we all doing? Make sure you subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram at No Former Athlete for more daily content. Let's get back to the episode. How often do you swim now?
So our local outdoor pool just opened this past week. So I swam 3 times this past week.
Okay.
Actually. It was we were pretty spoiled in Utah. Okay. We were there in Salt Lake City for 5 years, and there was a gorgeous pool that was like 3 minutes away.
Amazing.
So I went and it was a beautiful 50-meter outdoor pool, and so as you're breathing, you're like looking up at the mountains. Like that was we were pretty spoiled in the summer there, and then they were open in the winter as well indoors. So I probably swam like once or twice a week there. Again, mainly training for triathlon, just as like another fun thing to use that as like as a base for these other races. Yeah. But now and for throughout this winter, I swam maybe once a month, just because it was about a 25-minute drive to the pool. So if I was really sore, like burnt out on stuff, I was like, all right, it's worth making the trip over there. But the convenience and the time, like it just kind of outweighed that drive. So now that our like close little community pool is open, it felt great to be back in the water.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love that so much. Like there are people that are like every now and then we'll make a reel or something about like no former athlete or retired athlete. Okay, now it's time to sign up for my half marathon. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like this. It's this like pull. But I also think, because I know several swimmers, you know, collegiately from different places and all of that, and the transition to triathlon for you guys just makes so much sense.
It does.
It makes so much sense. Yep. And to having gone, I personally have not done a triathlon yet. I have the things and all the pieces for it.
There you go. That's the first
because of Alex's training, and she's done 2 half Ironmans, and then she's actually done 2 fulls now.
Yeah.
And so throughout that, I would like jump in on training moments. Swimming is freaking hard.
Yeah.
So many people will never and won't do triathlons ever because of the swim.
Definitely the biggest
So
barrier.
many
the
people.
biggest barrier to entry. Everyone's like, hey, I can bike, I can run, I can make it through whatever. But the swim, it's by far the most intimidating side.
Yeah.
Like wetsuit or not, like it's. Again, it just boils back to it's a weird sport. Like,
It's
stick your head underwater
sport.
and try to go forward. And
Yeah.
it's, especially as you were mentioning, like the improvement side of things, it's so funny, like how technique driven it is that you can, someone who kind of knows how to work their way through the water, like it's almost effortless. And you're like, it's the equivalent of like jogging. You're like, I could do this forever. But as you're learning and your body's at a different position, you are just clawing your way through and you can work so hard to go really slow and just, burn yourself out. So
100%.
it is I feel like from the triathlon side, I felt fortunate to like have that as the like, almost, again, every race starts with that. So like that's like the warm up for me. It's like, okay, we can just cruise through this part and then focus on the rest versus. So I feel fortunate that the most intimidating and scariest part is where I feel the most comfortable actually.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
The bummer is that it like, you can't win it on the swim. Like you can like in the like. For whatever distance it may be, like going X amount harder only gets you like a couple minutes ahead, and then everyone flies by on the bike and the run. So
and a good friend of mine who actually does some masters swimming stuff and trains with the program, she was saying too, so like if you use Ironman distances for example, the swim to a swimmer is almost so easy. You know what I mean? Again, you still have to do it. You still have to do it, but proportionally, the challenge to a swimmer who's good at swimming, the distance of the 2 miles, 2-ish miles, don't quote me, I know it's a little more than that, but the 2 miles is not a hard challenge as it is a marathon to a runner. Even if you're a really good runner, a marathon is still a long distance. It's still hard to work yourself through. Yeah, you can kick ass on the swim, and then you're like, okay, yes, got myself a little ahead. And then you're like, damn it, these bikers.
I know. That's really like you can, especially with that too, you can just buy speed and all these other fun things. I mean, the technology is pretty impressive. And I think that's, again, where I've really just been like loved being able to take a deep dive and to push myself. And I like in Salt Lake is where I really like fell in love with triathlon and raced a lot of races and had some good friends in my pediatrics residency who were very into it as well.
Fantastic.
And that, again, just that really egged on the competitive side. So we'd be out biking or running together. And I had a good friend who was kind of learning to swim more as he was, they say, like an adult onset swimmer. Amazing. So he was more learning to swim, but he was an incredible biker and runner. Yeah. So it was so fun competing against him because I would crush him in the swim. And then I just knew that he was like, he had to carry it the whole time. So like in some of the races really came down to the wire. So it was, I think that really pushed me to like get better at the other sports, and it really pushed him to get better at the swim. So we trained together a ton. And
that's fantastic.
And again, I feel like that's really he's also the one who's peer pressured me a couple times into signing up for the full Ironmans. And
I was gonna say that was gonna be my next question. So triathlon wise, and this is totally just for my own curiosity. So kind of distances and all of that. What have you done specifically Ironman wise, or have you done more non-Ironman lengths?
I really got into it. So my wife, Alex, had done like I think 1 or 2 triathlons like growing up just for fun. Yeah. So she's actually the one who kind of was the catalyst and like spurred a couple of our med school friends in our 3rd year of med school to like sign up for a triathlon. And I was hooked afterwards. Like, I bet. And I was like, all right, this is great.
This is primed for Jack.
So she encouraged me to do that. And then we did a half Ironman in St. George together our junior year of... Oh gosh, no! Actually, that would have been our 4th year of medical school. Okay. And from then on out, I was hooked. Yeah. So I was trying to sign up for a couple a year, and it's
how many halves have you done?
6, I think.
How many fulls have you done?
2.
Okay.
And then a handful of Olympic distance, like the local races,
the in betweens.
Yeah, and I really enjoy all the different like distances for a different reason. The fulls are tough because it really takes up so much of your time training, and the commitment is full-time training. So I'm happy I like checked that box. So I can, if I want to do another, it's because I want to, not because I feel this pressure to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, that's been the the big fun thing that's kind of kept me motivated. Because and again, realizing this about myself now, like I'm so much more motivated if I have something on the calendar. You can kind of, I'll swim and bike and run and just do stuff for like general fitness, like in the background. But as soon as there's like an event on the calendar, I'm like, okay, great. Like what can I do? How can I optimize this?
Here's my,
When
here's
can I
my
peak
training, and you go into more that, okay, even though it's not probably the same aggressive tapering in that as it was in college, but you always had to exist that way.
Yep.
You had to exist that way collegiately.
I'm like, it's been so fun just to like pick up yet like another new sport and say like, all right, how can I optimize the nutrition, or how can I train harder on the bike, or like, and again, like you can just do all these different things to make yourself more efficient. And again, it's so fun to have these time-driven goals outside of work, outside of these other things. And I think it really is like bled in. Like I feel like the community that I have is like, most of the friends that I have are like people who also love these types of things.
Absolutely.
And it's so fun. Like I would much rather meet up with someone for a bike ride or a run than I would like for a beer.
Yeah.
Like, and that has just kind of been how I feel more recharged.
How
and
you connect with
socialized.
people and all of that.
Yeah. So that's like moving around the country too. Like we moved from Salt Lake City for 5 years to Cleveland, Ohio for 1 year now. And it's kind of, again, it's intimidating moving it to a place and not really knowing anyone and working, and you're kind of busy in that way. But I ended up getting connected through a friend of a friend with like a cyclist. And he took me under his wing and he's like, hey, we have group rides these days. So I feel like I've like all of my friends now are kind of through that group. Yeah. And that's really where I think like sports and activity has been like, that's I think been the most helpful thing outside of college. Yeah. And actually was maybe one of the more helpful things in college, coming in with this group that you know you're going to spend so much time with. And those instant bonds and friendships just from that like-mindedness in sport, I think was huge. And I have loved to see that transition, like in the work-life balance and like having that fun stuff that I'm the most excited to do outside of work these days.
Do you think that if you were just like, I'm going to do Ironmans on my own and just train on your own solo and not kind of join group rides and not do it in that way, do you think you would still be fine and do it? Or do you think that community draw and kind of creating that team for yourself again keeps you doing it, keeps you interested?
100% the latter. Like, and that's, I think a lot of the bigger races I've done have all been with some other friends. Yeah. So the most recent Ironman I did in November was in Florida, and we had moved to Cleveland, so I was training there. But I knew that a couple of my best friends from Salt Lake were going to be there, and it's so fun to have that community, or knowing that everyone kind of has that same goal. Made me work harder and made me more excited for it. And again, the competitive nature kind of kicks in. She's like, oh, I want to beat this friend. And but that's where, I don't know, social media wise too, like I check Strava more than I check any other app, and my wife makes fun of me for that. But it's like I would much rather see
social media.
Yeah, exactly. I would much rather see like someone's cool workout than like a post of something. And I don't know. And so I'm fully bought in on that whole side of things.
I love it.
Yeah.
So often, people do talk about, and it's hard to not have that team. Like you said, and I always said this too, in college, when you do get the opportunity to play a collegiate sport, it's a little bit of a cheat code into at least your first year of college, your freshman year. Because you get to kind of step in on campus and, you're going through first year orientation, doing all your stuff. But then it's like, oh, and I have to go, meet the team, and I have to go do my team stuff. And it's like, that is so pivotal to be able to step into this group and have that like-mindedness, have that kind of, okay, we're immediately looking out for each other. And when you swim your last swim, when you play your last game, it's like, still your best, some of your best friends, you still stay connected in that way, but it's like, oh, I really leaned on that whole team thing. that whole team really helped for me. It's like, oh, wow, I base a lot of myself and my own personal identity around my team and how I fit into the team, what I contribute, where my relevance is via team. Yeah. That is how I formed friendships. That is how I formed, even my family.
Probably some of the most
very
meaningful friendships in your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And again, I still have all those friends, and it's fantastic. But also, I'm like, Aaron, join a league. Yeah. Even training, even when Alex and I train and things, for whatever the reason, it's like we kind of both do it. But especially for me, I just stay so siloed in this okay, well, but now you haven't worked out. And so you're not going to be able to compete at the same level that you could. And you're not going to be it's an ego. It's a little bit of an ego thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, again,
the comparison to the former self. It's tough. Yeah.
it is strong.
Yeah.
It is strong. And it's that piece of, okay, you did this to yourself, you know better. I literally write people exercise programs for my job. I'm helping people do all these things and maintain these things, but I love hearing about your transition into it and about that community that you're building, because it is so important.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, you also know this. Yes, just join other people, join a rec league, join a training group, do it with other people, because that's how we grew up.
Yeah. And I guess
that's how we've always functioned.
To ask one of the questions you asked me, like, when's the last time you played basketball?
A long time.
Yeah.
A long time. We were talking recently. Most recently, it's been dabbling in some pickleball.
Oh, okay.
Which has been feeling very good.
All right.
Which has been feeling good. I'm so bad at anything with a racket, a club, a bat, an extension of my hand.
Yep.
If it's hand-eye contact, I'm golden.
Okay.
So Alex played tennis and has always wanted to play tennis, and I just do not have the skill.
It's a tough one. The
make
learning
it
curve on pickleball is much better than tennis.
Much better.
Yeah, and it's
much
such
better.
a cool sport. Yeah.
So cool. And even just the multi-direction part of it feels so good for the basketball athlete in me, where it's just like, oh yeah, okay, I can do this.
Yeah,
I can do this. So that's been feeling good. But even within that, we're like, just take the court that we play at, we're spoiled, right? Mm-hmm. We're out in California, and literally the pickleball court that we play at, you can look this direction and you see sand and you see the bay. You can look this direction and you see the ocean. Yeah. And then there's literally basketball courts next to it. It's just like these beach courts. Yeah. It's like, just take a ball too and shoot.
Yeah.
But there is just that little piece, and there's that little ego moment of, okay, yeah, but like if you tried to play a pickup game, we would be fine.
Yeah.
We could contribute. We would actively contribute. But it's that piece of, you're not going to do it like you used to.
Yeah.
But that's also okay.
Yeah. And I guess I'd have that thought too. I'm like, all right, maybe you feel the same. Is the fun of this being good at this, or is the fun of this like the process of doing it? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I guess post-collegiately, like I've had to like reinforce that the fun is the process, not just the outcome. I mean, again, it's easier said than done. So
totally. Did you feel like you had to train yourself into that? Did you have that transition moment of like, okay, I don't have to actually turn a timer on.
Yeah.
I don't actually have to time myself in how I'm swimming this, or do you still totally time yourself every time?
So I've become so much better at, like, I guess that first year out, I would like when I went to the pool, I would be like frustrated if I like, the thing that's so hard about it is like, it feels the same. Like you're working just as hard, but you're just so much slower.
You're putting in the same effort, so you're doing what you're supposed to do as a good athlete. I'm working hard. Exactly. I'm putting my all
and
out there.
That has always led to like a good outcome. And then all of a sudden you see a time pop up, and if you're like sprinting a 50 yard, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, that's way off. So it's, I mean, again, and that's I think where the ego comes into, and I had to just become more humble and be like, all right, like. The other thing too, it's like, why would I expect to be? I'm not doing this for 4 hours.
I'm not having 3-hour basketball practices every day.
I have no right to just be good at it without putting the time in. And I think that's maybe where I was like, okay, like calm down. There's more things in life than just these times. So and I think changing the expectation is what really has kind of helped with that transition too.
Totally. Yeah, and you know, like you said, you asking like, when's the last time you played basketball? There's no reason that the answer should be a long time ago. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even recently, it's kind of that, again, through this whole, re-identifying and that shift in, okay, we can do other things. We can do those things and lean into the process of it and the act of doing it. Because it's like, once we do it, it feels great.
Yeah.
It feels great. It's like just getting some shots up, shooting some free throws. Again, we joke. It's like we'll still stand out. Still got to end on free throws. You still have to end on 2 makes. And sometimes we'll do it. And one day, Alex like shoots 2 free throws. I'm rebounding for her. She just looks at me and she's like, "What a skill that we have." That you just never need to use again. You're just standing out there. You just shoot your free throw. You're like, wow, we spent a lot of hours.
Yep. Yeah.
You don't actually need that skill again ever in your life. Like, you only needed that skill up until you were 22, and then you're like, good.
Isn't
it wild?
That's a tough, especially for something like basketball that is so like, I like almost envy like the type of sport you were like able to compete in, because it's so like, again, swimming, there's technique, but just like that whole, the interaction of the team, and I don't know, but just even like the process of shooting a free throw, like I can't imagine how many free throws you guys shot over the course of your career, and it would be cool to like somehow be able to even like estimate that number, and like how many hours did I spend standing at that line. And again, like, yes, like I wonder how different it feels standing at the line now. You're like, okay, like what is, I don't know, you always, I'm sure like
Not
growing up,
kind of the same.
Yeah.
Like,
okay. Do you feel like your heart rate kind of goes up a little bit, or do you still envision like this is going to tie the game, or this is going to put us like a full possession ahead? Like what do you picture when you're at the free throw line?
Yeah. Not as much as like the free throw specifically. Usually, like, and when we trained, right, the like most classic basketball is like, okay, we're gonna do conditioning here at the end of practice or whatever it is. Okay, and now go shoot 2 free throws. So if it's almost the opposite, and it's almost more of a zen. Heart rate comes down as soon as you step there. But it is weird because like now that I'm just reflecting on it now as you're saying this. Even when we're out just at the beach court doing our thing, when you step up and you like line yourself up, it is almost that like, if you picture it in like a movie set, it is almost that like, okay, everything like dissipates back, like the sound kind of goes away because we were so trained into it, right?
You had to.
Because you're sprinting, you're playing, you're all of that. Okay, now you're at the line to shoot your 2 free throws. So you're tired, but you got to push it, but you're doing the same routine, and so it is kind of wild how it flips you right back into it. That skill that you're really good at, that you've trained for hours, that you don't really ever need again. And I feel like for swimming, you guys kind of have that.
Just the number of drills that you're doing, or the time like standing on the blocks and like practicing your starts, and the big thing too, like the relay exchanges of like where every millisecond matters, and the goal is to be like less than 1/10 of a second from someone touching to you actually leaving the blocks. Like we spend hours and hours and hours in the season, especially as like the bigger meets come up, because you like if you fire on all cylinders for that, like it can be a huge difference in place and like a PR for the team, etc. So I mean, I still like can visualize like, and you knew which swimmers were coming in. It was pretty much always that same order. So like I spent hours like knowing like, all right, they're at that point under the flags. Like now
I know his fingers.
Exactly. Now is when I start this warm up, and I know how many strokes they have, and I can take off at the right time. And that's again something that like I will never have to think about again.
And you guys always have your routine. You're behind the block, right? Because I feel like whenever it's around Olympics time, everyone's all like, oh, there he goes, like
Phelps
flailing his arms,
shaking everything out.
Everyone's got their whole little shakes and all of that.
Ours probably doesn't look quite as eloquent as like couple dribbles, spin the ball back, and take your deep breath. And it's interesting too, because swimming, it's a mix of like trying to calm down, but also knowing that like I have 20 seconds or 45 seconds to go all out. Like you almost need to be like calm and collected, but also like amped to be able to fire right away. There's no like,
really
you're already warmed up, and you have to like, basically whether it's like starting your own race or like, again, a swimmer coming in and you're taking off, like you have to be firing on all cylinders. So I feel like almost the opposite of the free throw. Like my heart rate was like needed to be high, but then you wanted to feel calm at the same point. So like you're starting the sprint.
You actively had to already be up there so that when you hit the water, it wasn't like you were starting. It was like you were already in the middle of the workout. That's really fascinating.
And it's like a weird balance. And now like whether it's like warming up for a longer race or a triathlon, Ironman, stuff like that. Like again, as I kind of said earlier, like the swim is the warm up for you. Like so. And I never had like I don't have to be firing on all cylinders like from the gun, and swimming wise too. Like
you don't have to dive off the little Ironman dock that you jump off.
It'd be kind of cool if we were able to. But no, it's so funny because most of the time I'm wearing like heart rate monitor, like the watch that has everything, and just standing like as soon as the rollout starts and like the swimmers are starting, like it's fun to like look at my heart rate, and I'm standing there at like 120, 130, just like standing still. And I was like, oh wow, like that's
you're like
the
woo,
pure adrenaline.
I'm getting myself ready.
And I think maybe that's that kind of almost like the high that I'm chasing. It's like that, like it's cool to like get to that start line and know you've put in so much effort and time, similar to like the start of a game or the start of a swim meet or a relay. And I think that's really, it's cool to like be at the point where you can still commit so much and like regardless of the time, regardless of the outcome, you're like, all right, I've done something. And it's cool to be around a bunch of other folks who have done that too. Like,
absolutely.
I always get like emotional at the start line, but the finish line too, like you watch people crossing and I was like, I never thought it would hit me that much, but you're like, wow, like that person probably spent hours every morning thinking about this, like for the past months or years, even for like the longer races. So I think that, again, that community and that drive is really what has kept me like so excited to keep signing up for these things.
Yeah. No, but I remember the first Ironman that I went, it was a half Ironman. It was up in the Santa Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Half Ironman.
Yep.
Lovely.
Beautiful
lovely
place.
Half Ironman. If you haven't had the opportunity to even just go as a spectator, even if there's just and it doesn't have to be Ironman specific, but even just like a triathlon event that's like in your town or anything like that, even just go walk by and just watch watching the people come. It's emotional.
Yeah, it is.
It is so cool.
Yep.
It is, even just for as a spectator, and I know for you guys competing, it's such a camaraderie and it's really cool.
I volunteered for a couple, and like even just like one of my jobs is like taking the timing chips off people's ankles at the finish. So it's kind of cool, or like handing out their medals too. Like you get to see them at like this. It's such a weird sport too, because you're like, you want it to happen. You're so excited to race, but then the moment it starts, like you're so excited for it to finish. Yeah. And it's such a weird moment of like, all right, I've trained X number of hours. Now I just want it to be over. Yeah. And it like, again, that like the post race, like you have a bit of a high, but then like especially the couple days or the weeks after, like after putting that much time into it, I feel like almost that it's similar to like that last swim meet, like that the come down from that is tough. If like the post race blues and you're like, all right, now what do I do? Do I just keep signing up for something else?
Okay, do I have to sign up for pick another one?
Yeah. Did I like, and again, I think part of it too is like learning to appreciate the outcomes there, be it a good race or a bad race. Like it still was an opportunity to get out and push yourself. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's hard to like not define yourself too much by these like by these objective measures. Yep. So that has been actually like some of the letdown after some of those races is just as hard. If something doesn't go right or you don't get a best time. And
because it's a lot of time.
Yep,
it's a lot of time, but movement is good. Yeah. Activity is good. Yep. Even just from a health perspective. Yeah. Even just from that piece, but also just for yourself. Yep. It's okay just to kind of redefine it and have it mean something different.
Yeah. I was talking with someone recently and they asked, like I had just gotten back from a run. Yeah. And we actually had a bachelor party. So and I was like, all right, I still like know that I need this to like feel good and wake up in the morning. And someone was like, well, why do you like running? And it was so hard for me to even like put it into words. And I don't know if I have a good answer. And I'm like, I don't know if I enjoy the process, like the run itself or like where it takes me or how I feel during or how I feel after. But it's just like something that I know, like, I don't think I've ever like gone out and like gone for a run and then like felt worse afterwards. So I think it's maybe just like you can kind of trick yourself into all these different things of like, all right, like breaking down the barrier, going and doing something that's like, again, still tough and that you don't want to do. Yeah. And like I think it was kind of cool to think of it in that way, but I don't think I've ever really had someone ask like, why do you still like this? Or like, how on earth is this enjoyable when it's like, I don't know, it could be a form of torture in a sense.
Totally.
And I don't know, maybe there isn't a perfect answer, like a need to find that answer.
And it's different for every person. Yeah. Because also, like you said, growing up, it's like I ran to run down the court. Like my running always had a purpose. Yep. And I still don't love the extremely long distances and all of that. But even for me, it's like I've gotten into spurts where it's like just going for a mile run. Yeah. You're exactly right. I've never felt worse after it. Yeah.
And sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Like, all right.
Yeah. Just I love how you put that because it's like, I've never felt worse. Yeah. Even after a workout, even after a lift, it's like, I've never felt worse after it. But there is that routine piece and working back into it. Yeah. What do you have a set time? Like, do you have a set time that you always do it? Or is your body so ingrained to where it's like, no matter what, I'm running today because that's my joy. So even it doesn't matter when you schedule it because you're going to do it because that's kind of what you want to do.
These past years, my job has been kind of like all over the place with hours. So I'm looking forward to like more of a 9 to 5 in a routine where I can like build it in before work and after. Right. But right now I'm working like we have like 3 shifts a day. So I either start work at 8 a.m., 5 p.m. or at midnight. So some of the it's so bizarre, like driving to work at 11:30 at night, knowing like, all right, like next 8 hours, like I'm on. Yeah. So I don't think I've like worked out at the same time like at all in this past year. And I think that's kind of been fun to just like, again, still trying to find a way to like sleep and prioritize it. And some of those days you wake up and you're just so groggy and I'm like, all right, I still know I'm going to feel better. So I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
So I've always been someone, I love like getting the workout done in the morning or
Okay.
whatever like the quote unquote morning would be
Yes.
depending on the schedule.
Yes.
Because I think that like it just kind of jumpstarts the day. And again, it kind of is
sets
that,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know if some of that is just from like all the years of swimming early in the mornings, like when oh gosh, like waking up in college after like being up late studying or anything. And you're like, all right, like 5 a.m. or 6:15 practice, like you roll out of bed and you're like, this is awful. This is miserable. You jump in the water. It's cold. But then again, that feeling an hour and a half later, you're like, wow, this is pretty special. Like I've already accomplished so much for that day.
I get to do this.
And and that, I think that like intrinsic reward too, of like not only just checking that box, but also like from whatever, like when feeling better after doing it and having the opportunity to do it or being healthy enough to do it. Like I think reflecting on that is why I think that's probably why I like try to get stuff done in the morning and then just squeeze in whatever you can, whenever you can, before work, between
and then
patients,
all the other
anything.
stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
Have you ever had a moment where you didn't feel like an athlete or you felt like you wouldn't have answered yes to the "Are you an athlete"?
At this point, no. And I think
I love that.
Part of it I think has been, whether it's like consciously or subconsciously, like just feeling like I still need that to like feel happier, kind of, again, it might even just be like filling that void of knowing that like, hey, you had this group and this team and this like kind of this huge, like all this momentum that was like filling all the rest of your time and something that you really enjoyed. So I guess I think I've maybe like taken the time to prioritize like not letting it go yet. And I'm curious as to like when that will happen. Like I don't, my wife has joked with me. She's like, I am not going to be able to handle you if you ever get injured and can't run, can't bike, can't swim. So I've had like a couple little things here and there, but thankfully it hasn't been enough to like truly keep me on the sidelines. But I've felt that way too. Cause I was like, man, I think I would be grumpier. I think I wouldn't be as happy. And maybe like, again, just not having that other stuff to work on or that goal outside of work, I don't think I'd be as happy. And I think that is maybe where I would really have that moment where I have to like reflect and be like, all right, what do I really like? What else do I enjoy? What else can I prioritize? And how can I work back to getting to doing those things that I love? And it's, I feel fortunate that I haven't had that gap yet, but I know it'll come in the future for whatever reason, whether it's work or life or injuries and whatnot. But and I think that will be probably the hardest thing to grapple with.
Do you feel like at some point you will have to split from your athlete identity? Or do you feel like it's okay for it to be a part of you, even if you can't be doing and competing and doing all these things at a high level?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like if I wasn't able to do stuff for like the next year, like would I say, oh, I'm still an athlete? And I think, I don't know if the athlete is like the process of doing it or if it's more of like a mindset of, I don't think I have a great answer. And I think I would really struggle to like getting to that point if I'm not able to do it, like would that identity shift like cause enough cognitive dissonance where you're like, oh, I'm really like not at my best in anything now. Yeah, I hope to not have that happen, but I would not be surprised if it does at some point.
I love hearing you describe it this way because I think this happens to a lot of us. You've been able and you have consistently been doing something, been doing something athletic, been flexing the athletic part of you. And for me, I did the opposite right after, and I didn't because I was like, I don't have time to do a full workout, XYZ. Okay, didn't. Other pieces, other things. And I did kind of cut off from that athlete side. And then just now for the mental side of it, for the like, okay, hold up. You've done these things. You've always been an athlete. You don't just lose that. Yeah. So I'm just tossing it out there for you. If hopefully no injuries happen. Hopefully you're freaking running till you're 70, 80 years old. But too, there's that piece of for you, if it happens, I'm giving you permission to always be the athlete that you are. It does affect us. Even you just being like, oh, wait, I don't know what that answer would be. And it would be hard. It'd be so hard. Well, thank you so much. For this chat.
Well, thank you. It's what a cool time to be able to have this conversation of reflecting on like high school and college and like the 10 years after college at the 10-year reunion.
Here we are.
I don't know. I think all these opportunities to process things and
absolutely
are helpful.
Yeah. You've been crushing these 10 years. Proud of you, friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review. You taking that 5 minutes makes a huge difference and helps us to be able to make more episodes like this. And if you want to see more content in between the episodes, follow us at No Former Athlete on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm so glad you're a part of this No Former Athlete community. And if you know any No Former Athletes that you think I should get in touch with, DM me on Instagram at No Former Athlete. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.